Hello, everyone, and welcome to the college football edition of Proline. I'm John Cranton in Las Vegas, joined by handicappers Sean Hess and Jeff Saad. Jeff runs Las Vegas Sports Services. Going to take a look at 3 college football games for Week 4, including a pair of SEC showdowns. It was a week for unders in the NFL if you like to play totals, starting with that Steelers-Ravens game last week. And then in college football, boy, we had a lot of upsets, Sean, including an element of situational handicapping that kind of ties in with long road trips, plus teams going against teams off of some of those euphoric upsets, don't we?
Do I have to spell the word euphoric? Not too good on euphoric. I don't know what that means. I guess that's a college term. But yeah, especially in college football, and we're talking about teams, wins and major upsets. How about Virginia Tech upset Ohio State 35-21 as a road dog of 11? And then they lose straight up to East Carolina as a home favorite. Virginia Tech, 21-0 in the first quarter, and they just never survived it. Southern Cal, another big major program, they upset Stanford as a road dog. They did it a couple of weeks ago, and then they lose straight up at Boston College as a road favorite of 17. They lose it by 6 points. Should have made you happy, aren't you, from that part of the country out there? And then Oregon, big second-half comeback against Michigan State. I mean, Michigan State looked like they were going to run away with the game, and they were a huge underdog. But Oregon State came back and covered the game. And then against Wyoming, they do win, but they don't get the money. And then how about Virginia? Last week, this might be a setup for this week. Virginia, big home dog win over Louisville. They were a 6.5-point favorite. Now they're a road dog of 16 going out to BYU. And then some of the things on the other side. How about Georgia? A big win versus Clemson. That had 2 weeks of rest after that. That was in week 1. And then they lose. And we talked about this game last week. In my opinion, the biggest game of the year, and probably the biggest game on the networks for this past Saturday. In fact, if you look at last Saturday's card, it was really kind of there was really no marquee games. Georgia and South Carolina was the big one. So here Georgia loses straight up at South Carolina as a road favorite of 6 with a clear shot to the national title. We talked about their schedule, but they blow the game. Very manageable schedule. So how would you like to beat Troy this week? They're on the road to Georgia getting about 40 points. I don't want to be in that situation. How about BYU? Big road win versus Texas. The line wasn't that high, but they come home and they don't cover versus Houston. And we talked about that Houston game. Remember, a team going from 49.5-point favorite to about a 17.5-point dog. That's got to be about a 70-point difference. And they didn't look good early, but they do get the money. And then some spots. So Boston College. Remember the storm, the court theory is in college basketball. Sure. It's usually a home dog that beats a top-ranked 25 team, and then they're usually on the road, or they might be home the next time, but they're just drained. And most of the time, forget covering the number, they don't even win the game. But here's Boston College, and they're in that situation. They host Maine. There's no number in that game. It'll be huge.
Will there be a number?
Oh, yeah. They'll post a number on that, probably 35 or 38. I mean, it'll be a big number. It's an extra board game, so you won't see a line on that game until Friday, but it'll be a huge number. How about East Carolina? Big win at Virginia Tech, now a home favorite at 3 to North Carolina. Short number. South Carolina. The thing about this is you don't want to get too carried away with it. Big home dog win versus Georgia. But Spurrier is no idiot. He's been there for 10 years, and his task is simple. He just wants to win the SEC East Division and get to that title game in Atlanta. Just keep winning. Don't worry about what everybody else does. And right now, he's 1-0 in division play in the conference. He doesn't have to worry about that loss that he took to A&M because that's not in their division. Just get to that game in Atlanta and let everybody else worry about themselves. And that's what he's going to do. Now he's a real big road favorite. 21.5, I think, this week? So that's a big number. I don't know that I'm going to get involved in this game, but right now, yeah, there's a whole lot of situations where teams can go flat and maybe teams can step up.
Yeah, so some of the go-against teams for this Saturday to keep an eye on in that theory that's been working so far in September, Boston College, South Carolina, and East Carolina. All right, let's take a look
at maybe Virginia.
And Virginia
can pull that big upset over Louisville.
That's right. Let's take a look at the Thursday night college football game. Fascinating non-conference matchup of power teams. You got Auburn playing at Kansas State. Auburn opened up 7.5-point favorite on the road. You're now up to 8.5. We got 75% of the early money has been on Auburn. Here we have, let's call them the defending near national champion Auburn. They had one step-up game in the SEC against Arkansas. Looked unstoppable again on offense, 45-21, and they rolled over San Jose State. So this is the first road game for Auburn. Then you got this Kansas State team that is undefeated at 2-0, but kind of lucky to be there as they had that close comeback against Iowa State to pull it out 32-28. This Auburn team, 17-5 spread run. They've been amazing since Gus Malzahn got there. The 2014 offense has the same cast of characters in the backfield, Artis Payne and Corey Grant, and the quarterback Nick Marshall, and they are just unstoppable again. 52 points per game, 330 yards rushing, ranks 10th in the country. The defense last year had some trouble against the pass, but they're facing a largely run-oriented Kansas State team. So, Sean, who has the edge in this one, the SEC or the Big 12?
Well, first of all, you're right. This is a Thursday game. In fact, there's only 2 Thursday games this week. One is in the NFL, and this is the college game. It's an ESPN game. It goes at 7:30 Eastern Standard Time. You mentioned about the money coming in on Auburn. I'm not so sure about that. Auburn opened 9.5 and is now down to 8.5. There's no total on the game. I actually saw a couple of 8s before I showed up in here to do the radio show. Auburn 2-0 straight up and against the number. They win by margins. Their first road game, as you said. No look ahead here. They host Louisiana Tech in 9 days, and they don't play their first conference game until October the 4th. Thursday home dogs already, and I look at this kind of stuff. They're 2-0 against the number this year. Kansas State under Bill Snyder. This is his second tenure, and I think this is his 5th year and his second time around. They're 2-0 straight up, but they have yet to cover a game against the bookie. Very good, however, Snyder is over the last 3 years against the house. He goes 8-4 against the number last year, 8-3-1 the year before that, 9-3 the year before that. He's been incredible against the book. That's the last 3 years. Auburn, tough to really get a read on them. The second-year head coach is Gus Malzahn. No secret about what happened last year. They were 12-2 straight up, 11-2 against the number, and 2-0 straight up and against the number this year. This team has covered their last 13 games that they've played, including, and they last 4 they're on the road. The last 4 times they played on the road, their average margin of cover is by 14 points. Tough to get in front of that. I don't know that I'm going to get involved in this game because of Snyder, but the fact is, if I had to play, I'd probably lay the points. I don't think it's going to get below 8 points, and it might get back up to 8.5. But the money's definitely going on the home dog, and I think the reason is because Snyder, as a home dog, in fact, he's been a home dog he's been a home dog 5 times in the last 3 years, and he's covered 4 of them. But I personally think Auburn is still the better team.
Yeah, Snyder has been remarkable. Not only been winning and overachieving, but covering numbers. 18-7-1 against a team with a winning record. That's against the spread. And this offense, Jeff, for 2014, incredibly balanced. Over 235 yards rushing and passing per game. And the defense was actually pretty good last year, giving up 22 points per game, finishing 3rd in the Big 12 in total defense. However, they're going to be facing a very unusual and amazing Auburn offense, so can they slow it down in any capacity?
Well, yeah, it was the thing about Bill Snyder. About 20 years ago, I used to think that the reason his teams won so much is they usually schedule these cupcakes non-conference games, and then they would have a great record and go on. But Bill Snyder, no question, is one of the greatest coaches of all time. The guy's the first time around and the second time around. Kansas State's been a home dog just once the last 2 years. Last year they were a 17-point dog versus Baylor. They covered that one 35-25. The whole Baylor 35 points is impressive in itself. After a bye week, Snyder's 4-0 against the spread. The Wildcats are averaging 5.1 yards per carry and 2 wins over Stephen F. Austin and Iowa State. And the win over the Cyclones, quarterback Jake Waters was the first Big 12 player since 2011 to pass for 200 yards and run for 100 yards. Sophomore running back Charles Jones is averaging 6.2 yards per carry, and he had 4 TDs versus Stephen F. Austin. For Auburn, they're loaded there in the running back. Cameron Artis Payne averages 6.9 yards per rush. Corey Grant, 8.8 in their wins over Arkansas and San Jose State. Key here, Kansas State defensive end Ryan Mueller will be one of the most important factors in this game. Is he specializes in disrupting zone read offenses. Last year he was the Big 12 Defensive Lineman of the Year and had 11 sacks. A lot of trends going with Auburn here. 10-1 against the spread versus teams with winning records. 5-0 against the spread in non-conference games. 12-1 against the spread after a win. But I'm going against those trends. With an extra week here to prepare, I'm going to grab the points and take Kansas State. As long as it stays more than a touchdown, I'll take Kansas State.
Okay, there's also some trends that can favor both teams in this one. Kansas State, for example, the old adage about giving good coaches extra time to prepare. Kansas State under Snyder 4-0 against the spread after a bye week. I'm going to take a look, though, at a high-scoring game with the total because, boy, it's so tough to defend this Auburn team and Malzahn's offense. But I still have question marks about the Auburn defense. Auburn 9-2 over the total. after a straight-up victory. And then Kansas State, I mentioned great balance on offense. They're also 9-2 over the total following a bye week. And when Kansas State does not cover the spread, they're 22-10 over the total after a spread loss. I'm going to look at a high-scoring game on Thursday.